Dylan Schneider, and Lauren Caffrey. We would like to thank Chelsea for her words and Linda and the Center for Hope team for all of the incredible and important work that they do. I get to have the incredible honor today of introducing our guest speaker. But before I do that, I want to welcome our moderator, Jillian Knapp, to the stage. Jillian is a longtime anchor and health reporter at News 12 Connecticut. Thank you so much for being with us today. As a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, advocate for women's health and wellness, mother of four, Maria Schriver knows a thing or two about how surprising and unpredictable everyday life can be. Maria is here to share her reflections and how to cope with life's challenges, which are some of the central themes of her new book, I've Been Thinking. I have the pleasure of just reading this book, and you will all receive a copy in your bags today. It's going to permanently live on all of our nightstands. Maria uses quotes, prayers, reflections, and meditations as a guide to help us find what she calls the open field, a place of acceptance, purpose, passion, and joy. The theme of Maria's book is particularly poignant here today, as individuals and families receiving help at the Center for Hope struggle sometimes finding a purpose, following a loss, battling a critical illness, or any life-altering circumstance. I think I can speak for everyone in this room in that we are so excited, Maria, to hear your insights on how to find strength and persevere during some of life's most difficult days and moments. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our 2018 Center for Hope Luncheon speaker, Maria Schriver.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I just want to say, before we begin, I want to thank all of you for coming today. I know everybody in this room probably has a to-do list a mile long. And it's probably, if you're like me, sitting in your car, sitting in your bag, or sitting on your phone. So thank you for being here and for supporting such an incredible organization. I think loss affects us all, and how we deal with it affects how we move forward in our life. And loss affects every zip code, every gender, every aspect of diversity in the nation. And sometimes people think in a setting like this, people don't have any problems. And if you are economically stable, people don't think you have any problems. If you're in a perfect marriage, people don't think you have any problems. And I think loss cuts across every family. We all experience it at some point in our lives, so I'm really honored to be here in support of a program that helps families deal with grief, with loss, and with finding their way forward into what I call a meaningful life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for being so open. I think folks, I was talking to folks about this, you seem more open. You seem to have shifted to be more open and accessible. Did something click?
Well, something happened, but yeah, I think life is trying to do that. So I think when you're crawling around on the floor, you have, a couple choices. And, they say shit happens. And I think that's really true, as I say to my kids, expect shit to happen, excuse me. Nobody gets out alive. And how you manage whatever it is that's happening is the differentiator, right? And so I think that, I grew up in a family where stuff happened and ended up stuff happening. So I think it's naive of us to think that things aren't going to happen in our life, that we're not going to lose a job, that someone isn't going to drop over dead, that someone's not going to walk out and not come back. So I think being open about that, understanding the process, being acquainted with grief, being open to talking about it is a really important thing. It's as important as any lesson about networking in a job, starting a business. because I've met a lot of really successful businessmen and businesswomen who are miserable. And who have no concept of how to deal with emotional pain, no concept how to deal with failure, have completely warped concepts of power and success. And I think being able to talk about grief, talking about stuff that happens to our kids, to our friends, to ourselves, is a really great ability for managing your life.
And for helping other people.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me, based on your book, that you were raised.
Well, I just feel like I have my back to them.
Yeah.
I don't want to scoot off the stage. That would be cute.
Do you find now that it sounds to me like you were raised not to be so open?
No, I was absolutely raised not to trust anyone and be as close as possible. I think that also happens if anybody grew up in a big Irish Catholic family, if you grew up in a big Irish famous Catholic family, it's kind of a clan, almost mafioso type thing, and kind of it's us against the world, and it's no one can really understand. And so the good news of that is your brothers and your cousins are your best friends. And you're bonded, I now say we're trauma bonded, but you're bonded in a way that no one else really understands. So I think, and also if you're in a public family, you're also raised to think that everybody's going to talk about you, write about you, so don't talk to anybody, don't tell anybody anything. So my best friend was a horse, and who wouldn't, kiss and tell. And so I think that's, I think there are good points to that and also negative aspects of that.
Do you have a best friend? Oprah has Gail.
Yes, I think, I don't like that thing, like, this is my best friend. I actually really don't like that. And I only find women that do that, right? I don't meet that many men that say, this is my best friend. And I always feel like that's like a power play a little bit. So when someone introduces me to their best friend, I'm like, whoa, okay, got it, back off. And so I'm not going to take her or whatever. But I feel like I have a collection of people that support me. So I feel like I have a collection of friends who are, some are newer than others, some are older. I spent 45 minutes on the phone last night with Oprah, so that's 40 years. So there are a lot of people that I lean on, that I call in my circle, but I don't call someone out.
Do you weed anyone out?
Oh yeah. And I think that's an art. And I think it's okay, actually. I think it's okay to weed people out, and it's okay not to keep people in your life that don't deserve to be in your life. I think that's a really important thing. And I didn't, I think that's hard for people. If you had a long-term relationship with a girlfriend and she doesn't deserve to be in your life, I think letting her or him or whatever go is difficult and painful. But I really believe that you are the company you keep, that you really have to surround yourself with people who lift you up, because the world knocks you down. And it's tough out there, as I say to my kids. So why spend time with people you don't trust, who don't have your best interests at heart, and who don't deserve to be at your table? And I mean the table literally, figuratively, and largely. So there are people that don't come in my house because I don't like their energy. And but that took me a long time to get to that place.
Do you tell them they're getting weeded out? Or is it sort of?
I mean, as my brothers would say, it's really clear with you.
Because and you're talking about what you talk about in the book, which I really loved. You talk about friends and significant others, which makes me wonder about the weeding out. I deserve to have people around me who, 1, tell me the truth, 2, lift me up, and 3, want the best for me.
Yeah, well, I believe that. I believe everybody in this room has that same desire, or I would hope they do, because you want to have people around you that feel that way about you, and you deserve that. Yeah. I write about deserve, and I think that's a hard thing to get to. What is my, sorry, what is my deserve? Mm-hmm. Am I entitled to deserve something? Is it okay for me to want something? And I think that's a really important conversation you have to have with yourself. Is it okay for me to impose boundaries? is it okay for me to say I don't care for this person and do it eloquently and elegantly, but do it and stand in it. And so I say, you know, to my kids, I don't like that person, or I don't care for that person, or I find, as I used to say to my mother, that person is unattractive. And she would say, that person is unattractive. And I don't want them in my space because they make me wonder, they make me feel off balance, and I don't want that.
Are those the ones who don't look you in the eye? You say in your book you require your kids to look you in the eye when they speak.
Yeah, well, I think that's manners. I think that's important. My parents raised me to look people in the eye, introduce myself, no matter how many times I've met the person. And I require that of my children, and I require it of their friends. Oh yeah, no, I make their friends stand up when I walk in the room. I make their friends look me in the eye. If they want to sit at the table, they have to put their phones down. And they, you know, have to be respectful of me, and I want them to be a little afraid of me. I want them to,
I'm going to take some notes here. I have an 11-year-old.
But you know, I was terrified of both of my parents until they died.
You think that's the good way to be?
Well, I think it's, you know, I think I certainly have a different relationship with my children today. It's much more open. It's different. It's a different time. But I want them to, you know, respect me. And I expect them to respect me and their father. And I think we've, you know, given them a lot of advantages. They're blessed. And so, you know, they should stand up for that. And that doesn't mean, you know, like, I don't have arguments with them about the phone. My son, I have had the worst arguments with in his entire life about the phone, about putting it down, and, you know, me kicking him out of the room because he won't put the phone down. So that's not to say it's always pleasant, but I do think that, you know, if you were to meet him, I would expect him to look you in the eye and introduce himself, and, you know.
I think you should run a finishing school. I'd like to send my daughter.
I said my son is in Michigan. He came home for spring break, and he brought his Phi-Psi brothers with him, and he was with 26 guys, and he was like, Mom, can I bring a couple of guys home? And I was like, well, what's a couple? And he's like, 5 or 6. I'm like, oh, that's okay, fine. Then it was like 8 or 9, and it was like 10 or 12, and my daughter, you know, kind of anybody who has multiple children, they're like, it's outrageous the way you treat him. Maybe him, done that. So unfair. So, you know, beaten over by him. So he came with, like, I think it was 15 boys. And of course, that to me is heaven. I just love that. And I love having them, and, you know, as I say, my daughters were there, they're eating us out of house and home and disrespect. And so I actually sat and I ran. I said, this is going to be my finishing school, and we're going to talk about what it means to be a gentleman. And they were actually thrilled. It was really funny. And so they were like, well, how do we, you know, what is it if a woman says this or does that? And now it's even more confusing. I'd have to re-up my rules, because it's a whole different world than it was last spring break. So, now my thing to my son is, don't even look at a woman. Touch her, don't go anywhere near her. Jesus, oh my God, it's bad out there. That's true.
You talked about how at one point you were very sad about your daughter heading off to New York to go to school for business and design, and you were feeling sad, and your friend said, snap out of it.
No, my other daughter said snap out.
Oh, your other daughter. So
now my one, I have, you know, they all have different characteristics, but my second daughter is always like, it's not about you. Why do you always think it's about you? Because at some point it will be about me. I'm trying to find the time when it will be about me. But I think, you know, we all, that I try to write about that in this book. I find motherhood to be one of those things where we're asked to give everything, right, 24/7, all day long, and then we're supposed to be thrilled when these people that we've given everything to leave us. Tell us how great this other girl is, or how great this guy is, and how they're doing everything differently, and how they know better. And, you know, I find parenting, actually 20-year-olds, to be super challenging, actually. Stepping in, stepping out, where do I fit? How do I fit? I let go, but I hold on. They're like half the time furious at me. I'm saying the wrong thing. I'm touching the wrong. I'm just like, and so I find it, you know, incredibly rewarding and incredibly complicated, and I've learned a tremendous amount in it, but I find it, you know, wild, right, that you can sit here and do everything for whatever 28 years, and now I'm sitting in my house by myself. I'm like, wow.
What do you do on a day when you're not working? Are you lounging in your pajamas?
No, I work a lot, and I was raised by two kind of workaholics. I called them architects of change because they were constantly restless and trying to change the world. My mother, you know, never met a person who she didn't bring in to work for her for Special Olympics. My dad was, you know, starting the Peace Corps and the War on Poverty. So they really engaged everybody who walked into our house to help them. And they raised 5 children who are still helping them. And so I wasn't raised to kind of lounge around, but that's on one of my bucket lists.
But you've learned to take some time.
I'm learning, and I think you know, life does that for you. I think, you know, I've learned that I deserve to take a break. I've learned that I can rest. I can sit on the couch and no one's going to attack me. But I learned some of these things, I have to say, when my mother died. And I had an incredibly close relationship with my mother. She was my best friend, but she was formidable. And I didn't sit still while she was alive. And when she passed away and left, you know, I was her caregiver, and my mother started having strokes, and then she was breaking everything, and then my dad got Alzheimer's. So anybody who's in that space of, you know, you've got little kids, and you have aging parents, and you're married, or you happen to be the first lady, and it's like overwhelming, right? And my mother really, you know, I don't ever remember sitting still while she was alive. And so when she died, I was like still jumping up and down. I was like, well, she's not even going to come in here anymore. So it's okay if I just sit here and take a minute, take a breath, and, you know, that's okay. But I wouldn't have done that. And I said I probably wouldn't even have written this book had she been alive. So I think, and that doesn't mean that there isn't a day or an hour that goes by that I don't miss her and wonder what she would think of this book, or wonder what I'm doing, or, you know, does she think I'm doing the right thing, and all of that. But, you know, I think, you know, her rules were so strong, and her voice was so strong. One of the things I write about in the book is owning your own identity, owning your own story, being able to tell your own story. And that requires, I think, you to step back and spend some time in silence, and particularly if you're from a famous family, trying to figure out where your story starts and the other person ends, and what's your story and what's their story, and what can you say and what you can't say. And so I think this book has really been kind of an outgrowth of my going internal. One of the quotes in this book is from my father, who said to me when he was deep in Alzheimer's and he wasn't speaking, he didn't know who I was, and we were sitting in silence, and most of our conversations were like, what's that on your face? And who are you, and why are you here? Or total silence. And he said to me once, just looking at me, he goes, you gotta go internal before you go eternal. And I was like, whoa. But I took it to heart, because I was raised about what's going on in the external, you know, successful in the external world, you know, work harder, do better, you know, write that best-selling book, answer that show, win that Emmy, win that award, then you'll be successful. And I did all those things and I didn't feel successful. And so I took a different journey, and this is the result of that.
What part do you think your mom would not want in there?
Well, I think she would never say I don't want it in there. She would just be like, I don't really understand it, maybe. And she would like wonder what that picture on the cover was about, why my hair was in a bun, where did I get that dress, and why am I not looking directly into the camera?
And that's just the cover, you haven't opened it. You
Why
talked about how, for example, you never were a believer in therapy.
Right, that's
And
right, I was not.
That made me think a lot about the Center for Hope, because
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who've gotten help with their struggles at the Center for Hope. And before they went, they had to be convinced therapy is not a bad thing. Therapy doesn't mean you're weak.
Right, I mean, I certainly, I grew up with the idea that people went to therapy when their fathers were shot. That was my connection to therapy, so I thought, well, like, my dad wasn't shot, so I don't need to go to therapy. And so I think over, you know, my lifetime, it certainly is a different time, but I had a friend who said, you need to go to therapy. And because I was struggling in my life, and so I went and I learned a lot about myself, and I talk openly about it because I think it's important. I think shame is a crippling thing, and I think it can, you know, destroy the best of us. And I think we all have some of it. I think we all have a degree of shame about how we've lived our life, how we haven't lived our life, how our family looks, how it doesn't look, how it unfolds, how it doesn't unfold. And so therapy helped me as I decided to take a journey in, as I took all the questions that I asked of other people and turned them on myself. And it was a really beneficial thing to me. I was struggling with a lot of grief that, you know, I had never dealt with. I raised in a family who never talked about feelings, who never talked about grief. And that was a kind of paradox for me because I was in a kind of closed family who never talked about it, and the outside world was all talking about it. So it's a disconnect, and I think the bedside table or your bathroom or your friend's best friend's house, because I found that for me, I turned oftentimes to books throughout my life. I've always been an avid reader, and I was always interested in people's journeys and their biographies and how people handled things that happened in their life. That's why journalism was such a great profession, is such a great profession for me, because it allowed me to ask questions and learn lessons and to be inspired really every day on the job. And I think that we're here to tell our story, not our whole story, as much as we want to share with it. I don't think we have to share everything. And I think it's important to keep some things private and to yourself and to your family. But I think we all have lessons that others can benefit from. I think every person in this room has an I've been thinking in them, because we're all thinking about different things. Our structure of what makes a meaningful life is different. Yours is different from hers, is different from hers. And that doesn't mean hers is better than yours. It's just owning what is yours, being comfortable with it. But you've got to think about it, because I think so many people kind of go through life with other people's rules, other people's stories, other people's right and wrongs. And I at least know that my stuff is my stuff. I'm responsible for where I am, how I got here, the good and the bad. And I learned a lot of that through, you know, interviewing myself and also through therapy.
My title of mine would be I've been talking to myself. And I could do that out loud because I'm not Maria Schriver. Do you get sick of everyone knowing you in every move you make?
Well, I don't think everybody knows me. Actually, I think very few people know me. And I think very few people know everybody. And I think people may think they know me, but they don't know me. And this book is as much as I've given about me, but I think that was actually a struggle of mine growing up, is that I was amassed into a larger family. I was a Kennedy. I didn't even have a first name. And that was a driving thing for me, and it pissed me off. And I was like determined. I was like, when I get through with myself, you will know my name. And that was an external motivation, it wasn't internal. And so, you know, I was working and working, I'd win awards, and I became First Lady of California, and people would say, oh, you're married to the governor. What's your name? And I was like, oh, God, that's really interesting. I just got kicked, right? Because my motivation wasn't pure. I was doing it so you would know my name. And so I gave that up. And I went back and I figured out, who am I? Do I know my name? Do I know what I stand for? Am I secure with me? Do I know what I'm about? Why am I trying to get her and her? Because once I get you two, I've got the rest of the table, and then the rest of the table. And that's an endless, fruitless endeavor. So now I don't care when someone says to me, which they do all the time, you're a candidate. I used to go, no, I'm a Schriver. No, my name is Maria. No, I'm a parent. People are like, oh, really? And, so now I just go, yeah, I am. And I just take my bag on through. And so it's because that's not how I define myself anymore, and I don't worry about it anymore. But that took a while.
It sounds like you found a way to let go of a lot of worries.
Yeah.
Are you
I
up
always
for
replace them with new ones.
Are you up for finishing a couple of sentences?
Sure.
All right. I've been thinking, perfection doesn't make you feel perfect, it makes you feel
inadequate, terrible, awful. Yeah. And I think there's no such thing. And I think the pursuit of that makes you feel really bad, ashamed, unsuccessful, the total opposite. And I think, what I have learned, and I've interviewed so many people, there is no such thing. All people you see on the covers of magazines that say, I got a perfect body in 30 days, it's not true. And I always say people who aren't eating are angry. Because I know I'm pissed if I'm one day on a diet. So I think it's like, and I think that's a thing that women do to themselves. It's a little bit of what society does to us. It's a little bit of what media does to us. But in this book, I talk about learning to control your thoughts. I've come to understand that the mind is an incredible machine, and it can destroy us or it can be our asset. And that critical voice that is in there driving us, criticizing us, telling us we're less than perfect, we can turn it off. We have control. Therapy can teach you that that voice in there, it could be somebody else's, first of all. But it doesn't serve you if it's telling you all day long you're less than, look at her shoes, yours are soft, you're fat, she's thin, look at her husband, look at yours, oh my God, you don't even have a husband. that can really play with you, right? It's like, and I think, you can spend your life worried about what everybody thinks, what their judgments are, but you can't control it, right? So you can control, I think, who you think you are and who you want to be and how you want to show up.
The book is a lot about reevaluating. Do you think you would be at this point in reevaluating and really cutting through had you not had help from a therapist?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was always, I would say I was always restless. I was always evaluating. But some of the best lessons or insights I've gotten have been actually sitting in the back of my church. They just came to me on my own, being in conversation with my brothers, with people in my life, and from girlfriends, from guy friends. But they've come from being in conversation and being in silence.
I've got another sentence for you to finish. On the subject of letting go and no longer controlling every detail of a child's life. I got a little odd the thought of letting go on that. So the sentence, if you don't let go of controlling every detail, you blank.
I think you'll be an anxious mess, right? I think we all have to learn to let go, to accept, let go of, aging is a really great lesson in letting go, right? And Alzheimer's is an extraordinary example of letting go. I think, there are so many deaths, you gotta let go, right? Your kids, tell you to let go because as my son says, I'm not 5. And my daughter says, I'm an adult, back off. So, people help you let go, some people force you to let go, but I think the more you kind of take your hands off the wheel of certain things, the better you are. Now, my brothers would say I'm a total control freak.
Still?
Yeah, they would say that I'm a control freak like this book. Everybody who worked would say I was a total control freak on it. But it's more artistic. It's more like, I want a line here, I want it to look this way, I want it to be pretty, I want it to, when you take it off, because I always take off the covers in books, I want it to look pretty on the, that sort of stuff. I do that, or I'm a control freak about a story that I'm doing. Is it correct? Is it right? Is it like covered? All that sort of stuff.
That's kind of a good quality in that department.
But I think in other things, I'm like, when it involves other people, I try to let go.
Okay, that's kind of behind though. I've met, here's your next sentence, I've met a lot of decent men in this world, but men can be.
I'm going to say but. I think men are awesome. Yeah. And I like men. I have 4 brothers. I have 2 sons. I was in a relationship for 34 years, married 25. So I'm not into down, saying men are anal. No, I'm not at all. And I think I think if women really want to lead, we've got to lead with men. I really believe that strongly, and I think that when I started in journalism, when I started working, it was we have to be like men. Put on a power suit, put on a tie, show that you're tough. And I don't think we need more leaders who are like men. I think female power to me, feminine power to me, is embracing your femininity. It's being compassionate, collaborative, and it's bringing men and women along. I want my sons to be good and kind. I want them to be strong and compassionate, and I want the same for my daughters. I don't want my daughters to exclude men from their life, and I don't want my sons to exclude women. So I know there's a lot of male bashing going on, but I'm not into that.
I know you're doing a ton on Alzheimer's, and we're wrapping it up, so just wanted to touch base with you on that. What have you learned from all the work you've done on Alzheimer's? What has it taught you?
Well, it has taught me, I was talking a lot about that women were disproportionately impacted by Alzheimer's, and everybody told me I was wrong, so it told me that I was right. And that's another thing that I think that I would like to leave people here with a little bit today, is I think a lot of us question ourselves and doubt ourselves. And I gave up self-doubt for Lent because I loop around, and on so many things, I was right. And I'd go around the country when it comes to Alzheimer's, and I would say to doctors who were studying Alzheimer's and knew a lot more, I said, I think there are more women getting Alzheimer's than men. They're like, no, that's not true. And I'd be like, yeah, no, I think it is true. And because I ran a women's conference when I was First Lady, and I would, program for caregivers and people whose parents were affected with Alzheimer's, and it was all women coming and saying, my mother, my mother, my mother. And they were like, no, it's just because women live longer. I'm like, So I did a big report and a poll on it, and guess what? Women were getting it at a disproportionate rate than men. And now, everywhere I go, doctors are like, thank you for bringing that to our attention. So we're studying hormones, we're studying inflammation, we're studying X chromosome, we're studying how women age, right? And so I have found that through my life, every time I doubted myself and I let someone talk me out of what I thought, turns out I was right. And so I spent a lot of time giving my power to people I thought knew more than me, pretended they knew more than me, or convinced me that they knew more than me. And I think your gut is a great thing to pay attention to, and that you always know more than you think you know. And I think that that's a really important thing for women of all ages, that we know more than we think we know, and to trust what you know.
Excellent advice.
So I've learned about Alzheimer's that it's as bad as I thought, it's more expensive than anybody imagined, and it's going to hit every family in this country, Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, and unless we invest as a nation, and unless we start having a conversation about caregivers and brain health, it's going to be a really ugly picture down the pike.
And you have a mission addressing that.
Yeah, I do. I founded the Women's Alzheimer's Movement to educate women about their brain health, to let them know if they're perimenopausal, menopausal, that's your brain changing. Alzheimer's is 20 years in your brain before you're diagnosed. I try to reach women who are in their 30s and 40s because they're the caregivers of tomorrow. It's an expensive disease, and everywhere I go, I try to get people to help me wipe it out.
Thank you so much. I just want to note that I was going through the book hoping to find a couple of nuggets to bring up. There's going to put a Post-it on a couple of nuggets. Look at this. So many great nuggets. So many nuggets we can relate to and laugh about.
Yes.
I was laughing so hard when you
It's
said...
funny. I'm funny.
I'm
funny. I was surprised. Because people always think I'm like so serious and like everybody, and like I'm like, you know, I have brothers. I get it. I'm down, you know.
The part where you talk about, don't tell me to relax when you're all stressed out, and somebody's big advice to you is, just relax.
Yeah, that was my ex-husband. Just relax. I'm like, I don't want to relax. Yeah, you know, people tell you to relax, and you would if you could. Or people tell you to let go. You're like, I would if I could. I wouldn't be asking you this if I could. You know, and so I'm, you know, this book for me, I included quotes in every one of the chapters, or chapters are thought, they aren't really thoughts, because I've been encouraged and inspired by quotes all my life. And I put a prayer at the end of each chapter because it works for me. I know everybody doesn't believe in God, but you can take the Dear God out, or my mother was always Dear Mary because she thought Mary had her finger on the pulse, and so that was her like person. And I, you know, in Catholicism, I wear rosaries, I wear Ganesh, I wear Buddha, I wear Kuan Yin. I just take it from all sides. I get it wherever I can get it. So I think that we all need help as we navigate forward. And because life is long, and as my mother always said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we're all going to need the support of another person or a table as we navigate this. So they're set up with kind of a quote, a reflection, and a prayer. And I hope that this book ignites your own thought. I wanted originally to have journals that said, I've been thinking, and everybody write their own, I've been thinking, but the publisher didn't want to do that. So so I let that go.
Well, we could do that on the side, but it's really enjoyable.
And it comes from conversations, and so I'm hopeful that people will find a page or two or three to read, and it gets them thinking or helps them in some practical, positive way.
Thank you so much.
I would like to just leave, does everybody have where's the journey I wanted to read? Look at me, I don't need glasses. Where's the 87? There it is. So I just thought there's prayers, as I said, quotes in here, but I thought it would be nice to leave everybody today with one of my heroes. This is Women's History Month, first day, and I have several kind of best friend heroes on the back of this book who have supported me and helped me, and there's guys here too. But Mary Oliver is one of my all-time favorite poets. She's an American treasure, and she asked the question in one of her poems, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? And I love that because I think I hope there's wildness in every single person in here. And I think that's to be celebrated. You know, I'm a little wild, and I like that about me, and I hope all of you do too, like it about yourselves. And but her poem, The Journey, was really life-altering for me. And I read it at a critical time in my life, and I felt like she was writing it just for me. And she autographed it for me, and it sits in my room, along with a Derek Walcott poem, which talks that Oprah actually gave me for my 50th birthday. And I was like, what is this? Why are you giving me a poem about feasting on my life? And she goes, at some point you'll get it. So I just wanted to leave you with this poem today. Perhaps if you get in your carpool or get in your car, you'll think about it. And it goes like this, The Journey. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and the wild night and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. And I love that because, each of us can really, at the end of the day, only save our own lives. And our voices come to us at different times in our lives, and they say different things. And that is the one thing I've learned throughout my journey, is that my voice was different in my 40s and my 50s than it was in my 20s, and that's okay. And silence enabled me to hear it, and at some point I listened to it, and even though it was really difficult, I acted on it. And so I would hope that when I think of a meaningful life, it's that each of you have the opportunity to hear your own voice, and that even though people tell you it's not your voice, and they cry to you to mend their life or to ask you to go a different way, that you have the courage to hear your voice, honor your voice, and follow your voice. And every person in this room is strong enough to do so, and capable, and that, I think, at the end of the day is what makes you feel precious, meaningful, and worthy. And so I wish that for the kids that benefit from this, the Hope Centers, and I wish it for all of you, who I'm sure many people from your outside world might think you have no problems, or you don't look like you have a problem because you keep it all together. And but I'm aware that each of us have our struggles, each of us have our despairs, and when we shut the door, everybody in this room cries over the same things. And I think that's one thing I have learned, and that I feel entitled to talk about, because I think growing up people thought I didn't have any problems, and that was a negative thing for me. So I know that everybody in this room has stuff, and I know everybody in this room struggles. And I wish you peace on that journey. I hope this little book helps you as you navigate it, and I hope you know you are worthy of whatever you're feeling and whatever decisions you want to make moving forward. Thank you for having me today.